Hey guys, Nick from Taylor Timepieces here. On today's video, I want to do something fun for you guys and just review some negative, or rather, some hot takes about some watches that you see on Reddit and YouTube and Facebook. So I just want to review these comments and kind of get my thoughts, in a very standard Jimmy Kimmel mean tweets kind of way, and go from there. The first comment is: big watch faces are stupid. Okay, so that one is really funny. It's very blunt. Um, I'll say this: I think that we have trended in recent years to go away from these bigger watches. I think that the big watch boom, as far as having dials that are 44 millimeters plus, um, is definitely slowing down. I think that people are reverting back to preferring smaller dials the way that they did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. 36, 40, 42, 41. Um, and I think the idea of having something, I mean, even as much as 50 millimeters on your wrist is just insane. And I mean, if you look at the new Rolex Challenger Deep Sea, that is a really well crafted watch, but with 50 millimeters on your wrist, I mean, it just looks like a flying saucer. So I think I would have to agree with that commenter who says that you know big watches are, I wouldn't say ugly, but definitely going out of style. Okay, the next comment is on YouTube as well, and that is: Hublot is a cash grab, and they don't even try to hide it. Listen, I get it. It's been popular in recent years to hate on Hublot. Maybe it's a social media thing. Um, but what I can tell you is this: in my nearly 5 years of buying and selling watches, I get a lot of people that say to me, "Hey, um, my Rolex broke, my Panerai broke, my Breitling chronograph doesn't work." I never get anyone who says to me, my Hublot isn't working anymore. And to Hublot's credit, I think it is one of the few brands that went from obscurity of kind of being like its own independent brand to a more mainstream brand that is actually popularized by a lot of people. Um, I kind of call it the Nickelback of watches, in the sense that, like, yeah, it might be cool to hate on Hublot, but are they really that bad? I listened to Nickelback back in the day. Not a bad band, and that's kind of my thought process on Hublot as well. Is there are some great Hublots, there are some terrible Hublots. Shout out to the Tutti Frutti, in my honest opinion. Um, but in general, I wouldn't say they're a cash grab. I think that they are one of the few brands, as I said, who's really made a name for themselves, having such a short, um, brand history. I think they're only about 20 or 30 years old. So shout out to them. This isn't sponsored by Hublot in any way, um, but yeah, like I said, um, hopefully I think that the uh, hate for Hublot is going to end, in the coming years. Do I think that their movements are a little bit rudimentary when it comes to these pieces that maybe can be had for significantly less? Do they take these kind of simple movements and they put it in Hublot? Yeah, but I think that Hublot's should be seen as a statement piece and less of a dedication to horology, and this idea that every watch you wear needs to be this grand complication piece that is just you know out of this world is insane. Sometimes maybe you just want to wear a Big Bang because you think it's cool and you like the look of it and it matches well with your outfit. And I think that there should be a place in the watch ecosystem for brands like Hublot. The second is a comment on YouTube that essentially, is poking fun of all these influencers who are saying that G-Shock, that everyone should have G-Shock. And he essentially says that people should get off the G-Shock bandwagon, and makes a funny comment about how, um, just because something is classic doesn't mean it's necessarily good. And, talks about the McDonald's Big Mac. What I'll say is this. In that regard, I think that I will agree with him when he says that classic isn't always good. And the reason I get to that point, rather, that statement, is because as a younger guy, I wouldn't call myself a super young guy, but I am in my late 20s, and I have now experienced my friends coming to me for their first watch. They just graduated college, they just got their big promotion at work, and they want you know a Rolex. And the first thing they say when they come to me is, "Hey, I really want a Rolex. I really want a Submariner. I really want a Datejust. Usually in blue or black. They don't go for these other colors like green or white. Honestly, I really prefer them, between you and I. Um, and what I'll say is this: I will agree that essentially chasing the hype just because it is a hyped up model at the time, whether that be a Rolex Submariner 41, whether that be the G-Shock craze that started a couple years ago and has been losing steam, but it's still going. Um, I think it's important to get what you like and get what you want as the consumer. And if it's a piece that maybe you are not totally fond of, uh, don't let yourself get peer pressured into picking up a piece just because you feel like it should be your first watch. And that is something that I really fell into when I first started collecting, but also when my friends started asking me for watches as the watch guy. Was, hey, I feel like I have to get a Submariner, I feel like I have to get a Datejust, just because all my friends have one and they're talking about it. And this is a time in my life where I want to invest in my first watch. And yeah, as this commenter pretty much perfectly put it, just because something is timeless and classic doesn't mean it's bad, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be on everyone's wrist either. So that is something that I find funny when it comes to the idea that everyone should own a G-Shock. Not everyone should own a G-Shock. You should own a G-Shock if you like the brand, if you like the watch. This next one is a rather hot take, as well as all of these are, and it's that dive watches, like this one we have on our desk, is they're nothing more but expensive fidget spinners. And of course, I don't agree with that. I think there's a lot of utility in dive watches, but I do think, just like so many things that we used in the past, like rotary phones and um, phone books and dial-up internet, it's definitely used by less people. I think that people like the novelty of having these things, whether it be an escapement and a dive watch, whether it be if you have a Navitimer, maybe a chronograph, um, something like that. Maybe it's a world time function if you're not, traveling as much as you should. Um, they're things that people like to have that they just very rarely use. I mean, when was the last time you used a chronograph on a Daytona for racing purposes? When was the last time that you checked how deep your deep sea goes Do you really need that many meters of water resistance? Of course not. People like it for the novelty. Do I think that it's silly? No, I just think it's part of the watch. And when someone comes up that says the dive watches have lost their touch and their purpose, and that people don't need them anymore, or that they are expensive fidget spinners, I would have to disagree with that. I think that everything serves a purpose. Whether or not we use it for the intended purpose is a completely different story. But I still think that dive watches have a place in your collection.
The last hot take that we're going to go over today is a gentleman who's saying that he's done with all the nicknames. Of course, he's talking about nicknames like the Batman, the Root Beer, things of that sort. I gotta be honest, I don't see a problem with it. We are, of course, a community of collectors, and I think it is really awesome to, um, be able to share that verbiage with other people and that lingo, and just to kind of chat back and forth and know what that person is talking about based on that nickname that they give the watch. Now, do I think that sometimes people rush to give things nicknames that don't need nicknames? The Land Dweller is one of them. I don't understand why they called it the Land Dweller. But as guys like Roman Sharf said, there's really, you can't think of another name. So, I think that people should, in my opinion, not stop giving these brands and these models names, but it might be in everyone's best interest to wait some time before we colloquialize a model with a name that just doesn't quite fit the watch. And it's not just Rolex. You see it the most common in Rolex, but you see it in Tag. You see it in Omega. You have the Omega Seaweed. It's just a green dial Omega. You have the Tag Dark Lord. And yeah, I don't know. I think that some of these nicknames are really spot on, but some of them I would have to agree with this commenter here and say that they do get a little out of hand. So yeah, that's just my thoughts and opinions on a couple of the comments that we've seen around Reddit, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you like hearing these hot takes, please give us a follow.